Potato soup with hash browns and ham is easy and delicious. I first came across this recipe when my fellow YouTuber friend Alicia Lynn, she did a grocery haul, and in that video she said that she likes to buy bags of frozen hash browns in order to make crock pot hash brown potato soup in the winter. I thought that sounded very interesting. And then later on, my friend Andrea from Foodamentaries, she did a recipe in which she did her version of the hash brown potato soup. So I saw that in two places, and I took it as a sign from the universe that I am meant to make this. So I'm going to make this recipe. I did some research, and as always, I'm going to add my own spin to it. Here in this pot, I have some homemade vegetable broth. As always, I used carrot, celery, onion, garlic, and bay leaf. And to that vegetable stock, I added some pork neck bones. I used half a pound of pork neck bones. I was going to use ham hocks, but they were literally nowhere to be found, so I had to go with that. And after making the vegetable and pork neck bone stock, I strained that, put the water in this pot. I had about 3 cups, then I added 3 more cups of water, and then I added one medium onion chopped and 2 large cloves of garlic. Cannot think of the word. And 2 large cloves of garlic. Then I turned on the heat and I cooked the garlic and onion on medium heat for 30 minutes. I chopped the garlic and onion very finely, and then I cooked them before adding the potatoes because I want them to get really soft, if not fall apart in the broth, because I want your palate to focus on the potatoes. Here I have 1 bag of frozen hash browns. It is 30 ounces. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add the frozen hash browns to my broth. These have started to defrost, but they're not totally thawed. I think you could definitely make this recipe just by adding the hash browns directly from frozen into the broth. It's going to take longer to cook, but I'm sure it would be fine. Do not feel like you have to make your own vegetable stock. Of course, I highly recommend it, but if you don't want to go through all the, as the Argentines would say, quilombo, all the trouble of making your own stock, what I would do is I would buy store-bought vegetable stock, and then I would buy some smoked meat, like some smoked ham hocks or neck bones, or if all you have is turkey, something like that, and then boiling on low to medium heat the smoked meat in that store-bought vegetable stock to create your own smoked meat and vegetable stock. That's a good semi-homemade way of making things delicious. I'm going to add a little bit more water to this, then I'm going to turn on the heat to high, and once it comes to a boil, I'm going to turn it down to medium and start cooking the hash browns. I added about 2 more cups of water, turned the heat on to high, and brought the hash browns to a roaring boil. They're already starting to break down a little bit. You can see that the broth is cloudy. Now I'm going to turn down the heat to medium. While the hash browns were coming to a boil, I was picking some ham off of a ham bone that I had in the refrigerator. I fixed the ham in the oven the other day. It was delicious. And I'm using the meat in this soup. I'm using ham and not bacon. I know a lot of people like to use bacon in potato soup, but for some reason I'm not a fan of bacon. And also, if you boil bacon for a long time, I've heard it gets kind of rubbery. So that's why I'm using actual ham. If you want to use bacon, what I would do is instead of using pork neck bones in the broth, I would add some bacon to the broth, and then after it has imparted its flavor, I would remove the bacon, and then I would make some bacon off to the side, and I would put it in the soup right when you are ready to serve it. My potato soup with hash browns and ham has been cooking for almost 25 minutes. I actually had to lower the heat down to minimum 1 out of 6 because if I put it back up to medium, you can see it starts to spit. I was not anticipating that at all. What I've been doing is I've been going back and forth between medium and low, trying to continue cooking this down. The recipes I saw online, I don't think their soups spit back at them like this one is. I think it's because, like I said, the other recipes, most of them call for a can of condensed cream of chicken or cream of mushroom soup, which has a good amount of fat. And some of the recipes call for milk or cream too. And I think the fat reduces the splashing, because I've heard of people making strawberry jam or other types of jams. They'll add a bit of butter to the jam so that it doesn't splash them. So I think that's probably why mine is splashing. It doesn't have the bit of extra fat that the other recipes do. But I'm trying to keep this a little bit on the lighter side since this is post-holidays. What I'm going to do, since it's going to take forever to get these really nice and creamy if I keep it this low, I'm going to get my handheld immersion blender, and even though there's ham in there, I'm just going to start pureeing. And starts pureeing it. I just finished using my immersion blender to puree my hash brown potato soup. I tried it and it tastes great. Just as expected, the immersion blender chopped up some of the bits of ham, so the ham and the flavor of the ham is more evenly distributed throughout the soup. So that definitely helps. It's not quite as creamy white as it was since there are a lot of little bits of ham now, but it's definitely delicious. I have not added any spices so far, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, well, here I have half a teaspoon each of garlic powder, onion powder, and black pepper. I'm going to add half and then taste it and see if it needs more. I'm also going to add a dash of salt. Smoked pork is really salty, but I didn't use that much smoked meat, so I think maybe a little bit of salt would be okay. But this is basically how I want the soup, so I don't have any risk of over seasoning the soup. If you add spices in the beginning, as the water evaporates, the flavors will get more concentrated, and it might end up too garlicky or too salty. This is basically where I want it, so I can feel free to season now. Although this easy potato soup with hash browns and ham was definitely delicious, in all honesty, I think it definitely needs some kind of rich dairy. As you are about to see, I ate the first bowl of soup topped with some cheddar cheese, green onions, extra ham of course, and a sprinkling of red pepper flakes. Although it was definitely good, I still felt like it was missing something. Thinking back to how pretty much every other recipe had canned condensed soup or milk or cream, I added some milk and a little bit of cream. And the second and third bowls tasted a lot better. Honestly, the difference in taste between the bowl that did not have any dairy and the bowl that did have some rich dairy was very significant. Considering my experience, along with the fact that pretty much all other recipes for potato soup with hash browns have some sort of dairy, condensed soup, or milk or cream, I think it's safe to say that that's probably a really important ingredient. Although I added the bit of milk and cream off camera, I would say that for a full pot of soup, I would add probably 1 cup of whole milk. However, going back to the base soup that I made, I was definitely pleased with how it tasted. The ham came through nicely, especially after I pureed the soup, because little bits of smoked ham were pretty evenly distributed throughout the soup. The vegetable broth added a ton of flavor, as did the cheese. However, next time I would honestly leave out the green onions as well as the red pepper flakes. I felt like the crunch of the green onion interfered with the creaminess of the soup, and even though I usually do like contrast in textures, with this potato soup, I did not actually. And in regards to the red pepper flakes, maybe it's just me, but if something is creamy because it has some rich dairy in it, I usually don't think of it being spicy, so I feel like those two things, they don't go together very well. I know I'm being a bit more critical. Okay, let's be honest, a lot more critical of this recipe than I usually am of my other recipes. But like I said, the base concept, the base recipe was good. It just needed milk. And I was very surprised by just how much better the soup tasted when I added a bit of dairy off camera. That being said, if you want a recipe that's tried and true, be sure to take a look at Andrea's recipe. However, my recommendations aside, if you're looking for an easy potato soup with hash browns and ham recipe and you don't want to add any dairy and you don't want to add any coconut cream, I think this is a good base because it is still flavorful, it's creamy because the hash browns break down, and it's fairly low in fat. So if you try this recipe, let me know what you think. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.